Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. This is Preacher Moss, the host of the SOS the Shout Out Show. Hope you're having a great Tuesday. Apologies, we had some audio problems. If you couldn't hear the video, I thought it was set up properly, but I overlooked some things. I'm not perfect, so forgive me for that. But I think you got the gist of it. This is a day that we've been waiting for quite a long time. Some people on pins and needles, some people with expectations that if it didn't go well, we'd have riots. There's a lot of emotions um, that were thrown about. So this show is a little bit different. So let me just give a shout out to anybody that's coming on the show for the first time. You picked actually a doozy of the day to come on. The verdict was being read in Derrick Chauvin trial, the murder of George Floyd, and I'm a little reticent about celebrating. I think if anything, after the verdict's been read, you need to watch Attorney General Keith Ellis, my main man. Listen to what he had to say because it did resonate with me. Because one thing that did occur to me, and I've said this before, is whether Derek Chauvin was found innocent or guilty. The fact of the matter is, George Floyd is still dead, and we still have problems that exist and have pre-existed that allow for that condition to happen, if you will. So I'm not poo-pooing. I had full confidence he was going to go to jail. I had full confidence that he was going to go to jail, that he was guilty, that we all knew he was guilty. This idea of justice, that everybody deserves justice, um, I think that's questionable some days. I think that's questionable. You know, you deserve justice when you do things to earn justice. And let me be very, very clear before we go to the comment section today, because I want to open it up. I see some comments from JT, some very strong comments. We want to get them on the show. Brothers and sisters, today's topic is called, Derek Chauvin, an addiction to justice. We like justice. We crave justice. But what you got today was not justice. What you got today was a verdict. You got a verdict. You didn't settle for justice. You got a verdict. And don't confuse a verdict with justice. Okay? Never confuse a verdict with justice, because a verdict is just a consensus. It doesn't necessarily change anything. It's a consensus of everything we saw, everything we felt, every emotion we went through. It is from the first time I saw this man get choked out in the middle of the street while people had to stand around and watch. It was a consensus. Justice hasn't been served because the system still is healthy, it's vibrant. And for every George Floyd that we celebrate, get a conviction, we get a verdict, a guilty verdict, we're still waiting for Ahmaud Arbery. We'll never know about Sandra Bland, Breonna Taylor, Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice. There's so many people who, brothers and sisters, we don't see anymore because justice has not been served. So before we get into this, let's get into let's bring out our shout out show family. This is a little bit of a different show. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi barakatuh, brother Altaf. Thank you for coming on. Brother Altaf is our Canadian ambassador to the show, and I'd like to get your reaction, Altaf, in Canada. What are they saying about this in Canada? Because Canada actually had some protests revolving around George Floyd as well. Apologies again for the audio. I don't know. Sadly, I can hear the audio, but when I run it through the system, sometimes it's not on. I miss something. So let me apologize for that again. Altaf, thank you so much for coming for the show, and I want to get your input to the show. Who else do we have? JT, it's amazing in this country that the conviction of a killer is considered a historic moment in American history. I agree. And I'm going to tell you why I agree. Because the system is not set up, brothers and sisters. The system is not necessarily set up for justice to be served that way. And justice doesn't necessarily mean that people are treated equally. See, we think of justice as I want justice after wrong has been committed. We have gotten into that. That's an addiction. We got an addiction for justice, but we don't ask for it before a wrong has been done. We don't ask for it before a law has been put into place. We don't fight that hard. We fight on the tail end of it. And that's all we have to hold on to. That's why I say it's an addiction. We need justice more than we need correction. Think about that. We need justice more than we need correction. And while I watched this whole trial unfold, the thing that stayed in my mind was how many of the trials that didn't go this way, that weren't positive outcomes. I go back all the way. I'm just thinking not just a George Floyd. I'm thinking of men who were killed in the mosque praying, the NOI killings in LA, police shooting into a mosque as men prayed. And Malcolm wanted to go fight those guys, and it didn't happen. But the trial, it yielded no guilty verdicts from what I remember. Your Trayvon Martin, the whole law still is in place for stand your ground, brothers and sisters. Stand your ground is still in place. And let me tell you how unjust stand your ground is. Black people can't use it. There's a woman serving a long amount of time for being abused by a man that was trying to hurt her and kill her. She shot at the man, standing her ground, and wound up going to prison. It's so crazy that when they looked at the statistics for stand your ground, the majority of people who were shot were who? White people. Going back to our conversation yesterday about gun control, who protects us from you? So this is, this is a temporary thing. I like to go back to last year. We had a 2-part series that said, let's rewrite the damn Constitution, because therein inherently is where aspect of justice has been manipulated. It's malleable. It's meant for these people, but not for these people. And we have to be honest and open and assess the fact that people in history have not wanted us to have justice. They have not wanted us to have equality. Therefore, there's no need to even talk about fairness. This is one policeman. This is one policeman, one trial. Do we even have a metric of how many people have gone through this process without the cameras, without the publicity, without the reporters, without the lawyers? People who have suffered, and let me say this, people who have suffered in silence for years, who sat in prisons for years. Derrick Chauvin went to jail and they had to show overwhelming evidence to allude to what Van Johnson said on CNN. There are young men who are sitting in prison for 20 to 25 years on hearsay. Snitch rules, which is whoever snitches first, that's who the police listen to, and everyone else has to go to jail. Is that justice? Is it? I guess my question is, that addiction to justice is like we just want to be close to something that lets us feel like justice has been served. It's like getting high. The narrative about crack is when a person smokes crack for that first time, that's the highest they're going to be. The addiction is that they spend the rest of their existence trying to chase that high. And I want to be very, very clear. This addiction to justice, brothers and sisters, in some regards, is trying to chase that high. And as soon as we come off this high of George Floyd and Derrick Chauvin going to jail, going to prison, something else is going to happen. Something else is going to pop off. And here we are again trying to chase yet another high. Yet another high. We are dealing with epidemics of depression, helplessness, sadness, melancholy, feelings, expressions, and people are not themselves. Think about everybody who says, I want justice. I want justice. Think of the Me Too movement. Someone says, I want justice, man or woman, I want justice. But you know what they want? They want accountability. They want recognition that something went wrong. And while I followed this trial, I just wanted somebody to say the system was wrong. And I got a little bit of that. When I say got a little bit of that, I mean that the people in the system, the police chief and the training officer said, no, this won't fly. This won't float. Meanwhile, we're talking about this. There's a woman in Buffalo. They're still trying to put this law on the books. I think they did. But there's a woman in Buffalo, a black woman in Buffalo, who lost her job, lost her pension. Why? Because she intervened on a cop who was executing an illegal chokehold on the person. She lost her job. Not just lost her job, she lost everything. She had a family, and big ups to a man in an inner city Muslim Action Network in Chicago that put out the lawyers to support this woman for Carroll's Law, which doesn't penalize a police person for intervening in the action of a police person against a citizen that they deem as harmful or potentially lethal. Even that is injustice. Justice is forward thinking. Justice is framed as something that before we get here, this was the goal. And then you have something to base it against. I'm not really happy about all the episodic stuff that comes along with these trials. I'm not. I am not a happy guy in terms of episodic stuff. I'm not a betting guy, but I'm like, Chauvin has to go to jail. You know why? Because if you were to overlook the damning evidence, hear me now, the damning evidence, and I'm going to say this, the one reason why this guy was convicted is because we saw him in real time kill somebody. It wasn't a tape that was released a year later, like Ahmed Arbery. It wasn't released a year later or it just slipped out. We watched it in real time off this young lady's phone, and it went viral. And people sat around and started having questions about what has our humanity come to? In the middle of a COVID situation, middle of a pandemic, somebody said, this is madness. We all said, this is madness. And from our coves, we were very, very upset. I'm here to tell you, people erupted. Yes, JT, thank you to Darnella Frazier, who filmed that video of George Floyd's murder. And I say thank you to that lady because it took a whole lot of courage. And not just courage. Okay, not just courage. It takes a certain type of temerity to say, in the midst of everything that's out there, the idea that I could lose everything, that I could be attacked, that I could be arrested, that I'm going to forego that. Because what happened was wrong, and that man has rights. This man has rights. Let me tell you where we are, brothers and sisters. Why we celebrate George Floyd's murder. I mean, not George Floyd's murder, but the conviction of Derrick Chauvin. Why we celebrate it in South Carolina, Officer Spangler, who shot a black man in the back 5 times, running away. Do you know he actually got to go to the court and ask them to throw out his conviction? The court said no, but he felt like he didn't get justice. He actually got to go, and we've seen that video. You know, I could put together a PowerPoint presentation of probably 25 to 30 people being killed by the police. 25 to 30 people killed by the police. This man was a veteran in South Carolina. This whole thing, he got pulled over because a taillight was out. And the officer tried to tase him the first time. Didn't happen. Tried to tase him the second time. He took off running, and the officer pulled his pistol out and began shooting. And that's why we're upset with this young man, Brother Wright, who was killed by this police officer. And wherever it is, north of Minneapolis, that's why we're upset. And we'll be back at the same channel, the same bat time, the same bat channel, trying to get justice. There you go. States now passing laws outlawing videos. No proof, no crime. Yeah. My mom is exactly right. Yeah. you now have police who can confiscate your phone and erase your video. Wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Ramadan Mubarak, Sister Keena's from Minneapolis. What's your take on this verdict, Sister Sakina? You've been in Minneapolis a long time. You're in Charlotte now, but you've been in that city a long, long time dealing with the people. What's your feeling on this verdict? I'm calling it, the reaction, of course, and it's a very visceral, very emotional reaction. Don't get me wrong. My point is, when the tears dry up and when emotions go down, what do we achieve? Here's the thing about Derrick Chauvin. He doesn't change the system. He doesn't change the system. He's a product of the system. The system still remains. My friend Keith Ellison, he's the Attorney General of Minnesota, but he hit it on the head. He said, now the job is up to the people. The people have to put pressure on the politicians to change the laws. We spent shows throughout, we're going on 365 shows. We spent shows talking about things like critical race theory, the fact that you have laws that are disadvantageous to people, and because we don't know or we don't have access to law or the vehicles or the imagination to change the law, these laws that are disadvantageous to a group of people, particularly Black people and Latinos and the poor, they stay on the books. What I didn't hear is that they're trying to change laws. There's still laws on the books that allow people to choke folks out. There's still laws on the books that allow for illegal search and seizure. The things that you take into a courtroom at face value, and the jury goes, well, that officer brought it in. I got to trust that officer, and that individual is guilty. See, we can't be soft and we can't be suckers about this thing. And I'm gonna ask everybody just for a moment, but just pull back from the emotion, if you will. Pull back from the emotion, if you will, and ask yourself, what did we actually lock down? And see, I wish I could re-show the show yesterday. Well, I talked about the 14th Amendment. I talked about the 13th Amendment and I talked about the 14th Amendment. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th Amendment had to establish that freed Blacks were citizens. I believe the framing of policing in America speaks directly to the fact that they don't really honor and integrate the idea that Black people are citizens, that poor people are citizens. I'm going to tell you, it's a benchmark where people come up and grow up in a culture with the idea that you're supposed to serve them. And when you're supposed to serve them, brothers and sisters, you literally have no value other than what they give you. So this political system, this jury system, what we call justice in America, is a joke, and we're addicted to it because we keep thinking that the more and more we engage it, it's going to give us something. It's not going to give you anything. It's like the devil. He promises you everything and gives you nothing. What kind of justice system are we really talking about when I can look 20, 30 years ago and this wouldn't even have been a case? It wouldn't have even been a case. CNN had a People versus the Klan. You should check that special out. People versus the Klan. A young man was hanged because another cop was killed by a Black man. That Black man was found not guilty, and these Klan members said, "We're gonna strike. If a blank could kill a white man, then we should be able to kill a blank." And they went out and did it. Willfully went out and did it. Cut his throat, hung him from a tree so that everybody could see. And it took years to get these guys locked up, to trial, prosecuted, sentenced. Let me tell y'all something. And you may not realize this, but this trial with Derrick Chauvin went very quickly. This was a quick trial, less than a year. There are people who spend 3 years waiting to have a trial, 3 years waiting to have a hearing. You know what I'm talking about. I'm not lying. Do the homework. Go back and look at the guys that just perished out in Rikers Island, out in New York. You know, this was expedited. This was, I don't want to say for show, but it was for show to make sure that people were in some cases, you know, pacified. That we got a trial, we got a verdict, everybody's happy, and they go home. The problem is you go home, but the system that caused all of this is still alive and well. And so I'm going to put it on myself and put it on all of us. Start questioning this system. My mentor said, and my dad said, my mom said, what kind of system is it for justice that everyone else has it, but you got to fight to get it? Everyone else has justice. They have the benefit of law, but you got to fight to have justice and benefit from law. What good is the law, brothers and sisters? What kind of justice is this? The police departments around the country have certain immunity and impunity. They don't have to do certain things because they serve a purpose. They create an action and people benefit from that action. Whether it's the prisons, whether it's poor schooling, whether it's bad jobs, whether it's a lack of political activism, it has a purpose. It's always had a purpose. And I'm going to bring this up. God bless his soul. Dick Gregory said to me one time, in not a very nice tone, if you will. He said, when you Negroes going to realize you don't make the rules. You'll never make the rules. He said, that white man makes the rules. He said, and the rules are so bad, other white men can't fix it. So what chance do you have? What gives you the power to even think that you're going to change those rules? And then he said, here's the deal. There was a time in the day when we changed the rules and used guns or weapons. He said it was the civil rights movement. And we understood you had to systematically deflate and deconstruct the laws and do it in a public space with a big bang to make sure that you undermine anyone who's ever thinking about taking the laws into their own hands. This is what I'm saying. Taking the laws into their own hands. So let's just be clear. Break the addiction to justice. Get an addiction to correcting laws that can hurt you, that can kill you, that can they can make you disadvantageous and disadvantage you in so many different spaces. When are we going to get to that? Who's going to take out a hammer and chisel and start banging the hell out of that Constitution that allows for all of this, that allows for Donald Trump, that allows for Derrick Chauvin, that allows for the guys that beat the snot out of Rodney King to move their trial to Simi Valley and get non-guilty verdicts? When are we going to do that? When? I'm waiting. Like I said, last year I did 2 shows that said, let's rewrite the damn Constitution. Let's get a GoFundMe or Launch Good to raise up young men and women, Muslim non-women, blacks, whites, whoever, who can interpret constitutional law to the point that we could change it. That we can say, wait a minute, there's a thread in this sweater of the Constitution, and if I pull it correctly, the sleeves fall off, the collar falls off, and we have to reconstruct this in the framing and the face and the diversity of what's called the United States of America, and make it equal and accessible for everybody. Let's shout out our sponsors. I want to give a shout out, of course, to BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Check them out for financial advising, wealth protection, all those things. I tell people to call. You know what? Because you got to get the information, brothers and sisters. just like I'm talking right now, we have to get the information. Speak to people who are in the know. Pick up the phone and call 1-800-679-3175. Again, that's 1-800-679-3175 and get yourself some information about how you can protect your assets, how you can develop your retirement, how you can make your money work for you instead of your money making everybody else rich. Did I say that? Yes. Thank you. Also, I want to give a shout out to Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Go to bayanonline.org, and that's bayanonline.org. Listen, it's a great education. They have resources. They have scholarships. They have willing teachers. They have willing administrators to make sure that you can get through the process and get your degree in a meaningful way where you can be impactful. I was really, really happy about some of the Muslims that traveled, if you will, traveled to Minneapolis for this trial. Big shout out to Najee Ali and some of the folks who are already there. Linda's also, I mean, I'm giving shouts out. But here's my point, brothers and sisters, and I will leave you on this. Break the addiction to justice. Get an addiction to correctness, to looking around and saying, hey, correctness. That young lady that held that phone, she wasn't worried about justice. She's worried about what was right. And you know what? She's 100% correct in doing it. Justice is fleeting. But I tell you, once this high wears off from this conviction, we'll be looking around and we'll be nervous. We'll be nervous because we're going to be waiting for the next one to happen. The next one's already happened. Don't fool yourself. What's the update on the trial for Ahmaud Arbery? Have you heard anything? Have you heard anything? He was murdered before George Floyd. Have you heard anything? I think not. Break the addiction to justice, brothers and sisters. Let's get to correctness. I'm Preacher Moss. This is the Shout Out Show. God bless. I hope everybody's doing well. I will see you tomorrow, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. The Shout Out Show. Stay blessed.
Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your Shout Out Show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next Shout Out Show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Derrick Chauvin. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out DerrickChauvin.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.